In today's video, we will be looking at the Ryzen 7000 series announcement from AMD. So I'm sure you've all heard by now, the Ryzen 7000 is coming out round about the end of September. Although it looks promising, I do have one or two little sort of niggling issues that I wanted to talk about and sort of discuss in this video today. So that's what we're going to look at today. On the face of it, AM5 and the Ryzen 7000 series looks very promising. You know, it does seem to be performing better than the 12900K, which is obviously Intel's 12th gen top CPU. It does seem to be outperforming it. Even the 7600X is actually about 10 to maybe 15% faster in certain instances. Cinebench looks to be about 10% faster than 12900K, the actual entry level CPU, which is the 7600X, and then obviously once you go up to the 7950X, it's obviously far better. But let's just talk about a few of my sort of niggling issues I had with it. So first of all, I think the biggest problem was the actual prices which they listed. I think personally were far too high for the CPUs. I'm only going to concentrate on the 7600X, which is the one I've kind of got the biggest issue with, because it starts at $300, which is too much. Basically, it's just too much for a entry level CPU. I think personally. I know AMD will say, well, you got the 5600X, so that's the entry level sort of CPU that we want to have for sort of, you know, that sort of i5 or Ryzen 5 sort of level. Obviously, you've got Ryzen 3 and what have you as well, so you do have that on the AM4 platform, but there isn't any announced sort of Ryzen 3 sort of like, you know, there's no like 7300X or anything like that, or like 7100X or anything like that. There's nothing. It's only 7600X, which is the lowest CPU, which at £300 for an entry level CPU is too much. Then obviously you've got the motherboards. Initially the X670E, I think, is the motherboards that will come out. Personally, I think they're going to be too much again. I mean, they haven't announced pricing on these motherboards, obviously, but looking at sort of the feature set that some of the bigger YouTubers have done, bigger tech YouTubers, they've done, kind of looked at motherboards at the Gamescom, I think it was, and basically they look to be totally stacked, and although very impressive, they're probably about $250 or maybe even $300 or pounds. So I think they're going to be way too much. Obviously the B660 is going to be the sort of boards that most people are going to get, but again, I think they're still going to come out fairly expensive, probably at least $150 to maybe $200 at least. So then when you factor in the problem of AM5 only supporting DDR5 memory, it is starting to look a very, very expensive platform. And from what I could tell, like, you're looking at about $600 as an entry level into that platform if you want the CPU, motherboard and RAM. And I think if you're upgrading, you're not paying $600 to upgrade. I mean, that's just too much, and I don't see many people doing that personally. So that's, you know, that's just my opinion. I mean, obviously performance-wise, like I said, it does look good. If you want to see more performance things in terms of, you know, you can go to the AMD site, and I'll maybe put a few things up on this video, but at the moment we don't really have a clear idea on the performance, because obviously the other tech YouTubers haven't actually got their hands on these processors, so we don't know the full kind of performance. And the other thing I wanted to touch on as well is that the TDP for these processors, even the 7600X, seems to be about 105 watts, so it's just too much really. I think considering a 65 watt CPU of the Ryzen 5600X, that's like almost double the wattage and the power usage. And in this age that we're kind of in, and this sort of time that we're in, power usage is a big issue, because the energy prices are going up all the time, at least in the UK anyway. I mean, I think they're going up worldwide, but in the UK certainly it's very bad. And to have almost double usage, double the power usage from your CPU, I think that's going to be difficult for people to upgrade, especially during this time. You know, it's a difficult time for everyone, and it kind of feels the AM5 kind of, I don't know, it kind of feels it's kind of going away from where the market's kind of going to, because I kind of feel that market's going more towards sort of higher performance with less power and more efficiency basically. And I kind of feel that AM5 is kind of going in the opposite direction of use as much power as possible to get the very best performance as possible. But obviously they want to get the best performance. They want to have the new CPUs that totally destroy the Intel 12th gen, and hopefully even the Intel 13th gen, it will destroy them as well, because obviously they want market dominance. So I can understand where they're coming from, but personally it just feels like it's a little bit too much for the entry level. Now obviously people who are on the higher end and can afford it, they're not going to have a problem. They'll just pay whatever prices they have to pay to get onto the new platforms and what have you. And DDR5, they've probably got DDR5 already. If they upgraded to Intel 12th gen, they probably bought the DDR5 motherboards instead of the DDR4 motherboards, so they can just use their current DDR5 and then just upgrade the motherboard and CPU, obviously. But I think for most people, £600 or $600 sort of entry level point to get into the platform is going to be too much. I really wish they would have supported DDR4 actually. They would have had DDR4 motherboards and DDR5 motherboards for AM5. I think that would have been a lot better choice. But as it is, it looks like a very expensive sort of initial platform to get into, and especially considering that the Ryzen 5600X can be had for under £200 now. And if you really want to, you could have a cheap B450 motherboard, or even a cheap B550 motherboard now. B550 has come down a lot now, and you can probably get one for like £70-80. So as a platform, you're probably into the platform for like 300-350. So that's probably a more realistic option, I think, for most people. I think most people, if they want to upgrade, they're looking at about £400 at most to spend on their platform if they're going to switch out their motherboard, CPU, and obviously RAM as well. I think probably about 400, and maybe absolute highest 500. But I kind of feel that $600 again for the entry level is just a bit too much. So as I said, I do think we need to wait until the performance benchmarks comes out and we can see what sort of difference it makes with games, because ultimately I think if you're spending $600, you're buying a new graphics card, aren't you? That's your priority. Or even if you've got a decent graphics card, or maybe the RX 2070 or maybe 2080 or something, and you want to go up to the next sort of the RTX 30 series, or even potentially the 40 series, which is after that, then I think you're going to save up your money and obviously spend it onto your graphics card. And I can't really see too many people wanting to spend that £600 or $600 to get into the AM5 platform. But again, I could be wrong, and obviously down the line, obviously prices will start to decrease probably about a year or so into the platform, and we probably will see the Ryzen 3 processors start to hit the market round then as well, because usually the more lower budget stuff doesn't get released until a little bit later into the platform. But I think overall it's a bit mixed feelings with AM5. I think initially, yes, it does look impressive, and the performance benchmarks or initial benchmarks that AMD have given does look like it's a very promising platform. But I do think there's a lot of caveats to it because of the increased power usage, which I think is a big issue. Obviously the new motherboards that you have to buy, and obviously the DDR5 is a big issue as well, I feel, over supporting DDR4. But anyway, I think I've kind of gone on a bit too much with this video now, so let me know in the comments what you think. Are you looking forward to the Ryzen 7000 series, or are you a little bit underwhelmed? I mean, my opinion personally, I feel a little underwhelmed, but obviously, like I say, we'll wait until it gets released and see what prices are and what have you. But I think initially I won't be looking at upgrading at all. I think the current gen CPUs are more than good enough. Even my Intel 12100F is a really good processor still, and until I see games struggling to use the CPU, because even modern games are only using about 30, maybe 40% at most of the CPU. Even for something like a 12100F, you're not pushing that CPU right to the limit. Until I start to see more modern games pushing that limit on the CPU, I just don't see the point of upgrading. You just don't need to. Until you're getting games that you can't run fully with the graphics cards available, I just don't see the reason to upgrade currently. But like I say, let me know your thoughts down below, and I am interested to see what people think of the Ryzen 7000 series, and if you think AMD are going in the wrong direction or the right direction, obviously let me know. So I think that's all from this video, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.